Welcome back. We are looking forward to continue on page 250, pretty much the center of the page. The line begins Nachmeni, which is actually, we mentioned, I will try to mention at least in brief this story where the Alter Rebbe brings Uvda de Rabbi Bar Nachmeni, the story of Rabbi Bar Nachmeni. We'll get to that in a moment. We're holding Aval Gili Ha'orish B'tchis HaMeisim. However, the revelation of the Ha'ora in Tchis HaMeisim, the light, the energy, which this world in the time of Tchis HaMeisim will experience, Yeh Mibchinas Seviv Kol Almin will be from the level of Seviv Kol Almin, She'eina Mibchinas Tzimtzum V'Shiru Gvul, which is not in a level of any contracting or condensing force, or is force and energy as a result of a condensement over an air, V'Shiru Gvul of any limitation and border, literally translated, limitation, Elabelibu V'Tachlis. An unlimited air, an unlimited light will be manifest in this very physical world, like it's explained in Likutei Amarim, which is the first segment. In the 40th chapter, the explanation of Seviv Kol Almin explains there and elaborates in the famous chapter 48, Likutei Amarim, which will explain this in a moment, that it's not a circle, but it just does not invest. It's not manifest in a way that its investment is the connection between Seviv Kol Almin and this, where in Oilimus, which of course it exists because Seviv Kol Almin doesn't go away, because HaKadosh Baruch Hu establishes the Memale Kol Almin phenomenon, the Memale Kol Almin establishment, which creates Olam. The Seviv Kol Almin doesn't go away; it's there equally. We'll explain all this in a moment, but it's there in a way that it transcends. It's all there completely, but it just does not invest in the consciousness of the reality of Elam Haza or all Olamis. We'll explain again, and just give us a moment over here. But because if it would have, if the light of Seviv Kol Almin would be manifest and the light of Seviv Kol Almin would be sensed, so nothing would be able to exist. Nothing finite could ever exist in the face of the infinite. Literally, it can't exist. It can't be, even in the most minimal manner of existence, it can't, because by definition, nothing finite could exist in the face of the infinite. So the infinite is there, but it's not in a way of islapshus, it's not recognized, it's not invested overtly in a revealed manner. That's what makes it Seviv Kol Almin, but not Seviv in a way that it just circles. It's completely there, but not there in a way of islapshus. It's not invested in it internally. Va'ayin sham heitiv, look there thoroughly, and you'll appreciate this message. So, on the overall, we say, Likutei Amarim, as Alter Rebbe we mentioned at different times, Alter Rebbe himself cross-references from every segment to another, practically, because this is additional to the overall. Divrei Torah ani b'makom echad ashir b'makom sheni, as the Gemara said. There are many times that Torah is elaborate in one area, not that elaborate in the other. So therefore, Torah itself cross-references many times in order to see where the subject is discussed in expansion, in elaboration. So too, the Alter Rebbe, for example, this very subject of Seviv Kol Almin, Alter Rebbe explains famously in the 40th chapter of Likutei Amarim. Now, in this very segment, we do mention periodically, we merited to conclude first three segments completely. Mamash Aschus, that we're able to go through every single one of these segments from beginning to the end. We're holding now the fourth Igeres HaKodesh. We do mention from time to time that Igeres HaKodesh, again, 4 out of 5. There is, again, precision. Tanya is a safer, known to be safer. Tanya Kadisha would be the safer, the Teresh Biksav, that is, of Teres Achsidus. That's the number 5. We're holding now on Igeres HaKodesh, which is the fourth segment. We had a very distinct segment. It could be appreciated by the name, Igeres HaKodesh. Igeres, these are epistles, letters written, different times, addressing different ideas, different matters which needed to be addressed at the time, which were addressed by the Alter Rebbe. There is a common thread in the overall Igeres HaKodesh. Namely, the Alter Rebbe underscores the mitzvah tzedakah. Not to go into it now, we had a full presentation in the beginning of 10 we give this Igeres HaKodesh in the beginning of the 10th epistle, 7 back over. And easy to access. We do mention again, namely for the newcomers, that wherever you're watching this class, there is an advantage of the original website, tanyaonline.com, one word, tanyaonline.com, and you could see all the previous classes. For that matter, for example, Likutei Amarim Perik Mem Ches, it's a click away. Likutei Amarim, which is the first segment of Sefer Tanya Kadisha, the 48th chapter. For that matter, none of the segments reach 48. Even Igeres HaKodesh is the second to the largest segment in number of prakim, for sure. In other words, a number of chapters, a number of letters. This is Igeres HaKodesh, there's 32 in the Sefer Tanya Kadisha. Of course, the Alter Rebbe wrote many more, but what made it into the Sefer Tanya Kadisha is 32. The Likutei Amarim has 53 chapters. This would be the 48th chapter in Likutei Amarim. Now there's 48. None of the segments reach that number. So 40. When you say Likutei Amarim Perik Mem Ches, of course, Likutei Amarim, right? Likutei Amarim. This is the first segment, 48th chapter. It's a click away. The way this website is set up, that all the previous classes from the very beginning of Likutei Amarim are lined up on the left side of the site. So it's easy to access, literally a click away. There's an advantage we mentioned periodically. It also helps to know where you're, picking up on the exact message you're looking for. There's Alter Rebbe cross-reference. We cross-reference from time to time when we're learning, and it's a certain subject. Even though Alter Rebbe doesn't mention to look there, but it's a subject which is discussed in another place, and it's understandably would send you to that place, and it's easy to find it because the text decides that it's every class goes along with a text which the class covers. There's an additional advantage on this very site that the text is on a separate scroll bar, as such easy to follow the class and easy to connect where we're holding what you're looking, what subject exactly you're looking for, based on the way it's set up. It corresponds to the actual class. So, for example, this idea of Likutei Amarim, it's easy to find in Perik Mem Ches. There was a number of classes on Perik Mem Ches, but if you go through the text in Perik Mem Ches, the 48th chapter, it's easy to find out the truth of the matter. If on this site, any other site, wherever you're learning Tanya, or just open a Tanya, look at Perik Mem Ches, you see the entire explanation of the Alter Rebbe. What a brilliant and so brilliantly presented by the Alter Rebbe. I always have a doubt if you're allowed to even say that Alter Rebbe namely was a Ish Kodesh, Kodesh Kodashim, holiest figures of all of history. The Alter Rebbe said his words coming from on high. He was a conduit to the on high. But nonetheless, Alter Rebbe was a famous expression. Alter Rebbe's Lasheni was Lasheni Azov. His Shulchan Aruch, the Rav famous Rav Shulchan Aruch, another Shulchan Aruch known as the Rav Shulchan Aruch. The way the Alter Rebbe wrote the halachas are so unique and so distinct. And again, this is the reason why Gdei Yisrael called the Lashon of the Alter Rebbe L'Sheni HaZahav, his golden tongue, his golden writing, as an example. So sometimes it just naturally, when you see such a eloquent presentation of the Alter Rebbe on a certain subject, particularly on a subject which is a foreign, one way or another, or a new idea, and one of the Yesodus of the Alter Rebbe, the ability to explain Seva, the notion of Seva Kol Almin to the human mind in such a way. So it slips out the word, a brilliant explanation, but of course the Alter Rebbe is presenting to us the inner dimensions of the reality, of the godly reality, because this is what the Alter Rebbe's, namely his mandate, was Shnei Oyer, to reveal the Oyer of Nigla Teira and Oyer Pnimis HaTeira, namely the Pnimis HaTeira, the way it becomes a hachana, preparation to Yimais HaMashiach, to when the man would stay, the human being would stand face to face with his Creator in a way that not on the level of emunah, belief, and faith, but rather that's appreciating the godly reality in a way that takes it completely. The human mind appreciates the godly reality like it appreciates anything else, meaning to say that there's an absorption and an understanding and a real, mind wrapping around, have the ability to wrap around itself the deepest concepts, which are usually, esoteric, transcendent, knowing it a little more on a peripheral manner. But the Alter Rebbe's chidush, novelty of the Alter Rebbe was Chabad, to take it and make it a reality in the human intellect, that the human intellect could be able to appreciate these deep concepts in a way that become real, namely it becomes real. And it becomes real, you're pretty much standing face to face with the godly reality in a way that, like the Pasuk says, that Mashiach will come, the land will be full of the knowledge of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Ki ayin b'ayin yirah, the physical eye will be able to see the godly reality. Even the physical flesh will be able to see the godly reality. And this was the point and the objective of the Alter Rebbe. We mentioned many times, give or take, the time of the Avram Yitzchak Yaakov, which came as a preparation and led Am Yisrael. In the end of the day, they were the foundation for the evolution and the development of Am Yisrael and their connection to Torah, which led to the actual Matan Torah, the day of Matan Torah, Ma'amid Har Sinai. The Alter Rebbe, with the subsequent Rabbeim, were there to introduce, to open the window and the door to the time when Umallah is Deis Hashem. Like the Rambam writes, that the occupation of the entire world will be completely Ladasas Hashem, to know Hashem. Knowing Hashem is with clear knowledge. Of course, the Rambam adds, Kifi Kecha Adam, how much man could comprehend and tolerate, but they'll have a clear knowledge of their Creator. You're talking about knowledge, not only amunah, not only faith, but actual clarity, knowledge, and the which is, we say knowledge, that itself, but particularly as the Alter Rebbe explains, it doesn't say chokhmah or bina as much as it says Molod's Deyas Hashem. If you look in the end of the third chapter, the Likutei Amorim, the Alter Rebbe here rather establishes the distinction between Das and Chokhmah Bina. Das is when it resonates, one becoming personal with a message. Worthwhile to see the lashon of the Alter Rebbe there. Bina is already, you understand the matter fully, but nonetheless it doesn't become personal with you. Das is where it does, and therefore there's this sensation of this which you know, and there is a reaction. It brings Ava V'yira, because Das is a total different type of connection with a concept, even over Chochmah Bina. Again, towards the end of the third chapter of Likutei Amorim, click away over here on this segment, on this study over here on the site. So the Likutei Amorim, Perigim Ches, the Alter Rebbe presents this idea of Sevev Kalalmin, which we'll explain in a moment to get to connect this class to the previous. If you recall, not to repeat all this which we studied, I believe this is the fifth class on this Yud Zayin, on the 17th epistle, where the Alter Rebbe points out that by Tchias HaMesim there's going to be the full manifestation of the reality of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the way HaKadosh Baruch Hu for himself by himself, which is greater than the Giluyim, the greatest revelations which exist in Gan Eden, which there it's only from the Memale Kol Almin. I'm not going to repeat everything because it's a click away. Last week's class, actually, the way the classes are set up, as you probably know by now, those who are part of the part of the class over time, we know that the latter classes are on the top of the row of classes of all these presentations from which we mentioned are lined up from the very beginning of Tanya. The very beginning of Tanya rather lined up on the site, but it starts from top to bottom, meaning to say that the latter classes are on the top, so it's even easier to appreciate this very chapter, this very epistle. It's a click away to see where the Alter Rebbe was coming. If you're following, you need not to, but if you want to see the Alter Rebbe's message, it's a click away. Basically, Alter Rebbe is saying that even the neshamas, which Yeshu and Neni B'ziv Ashchina, they sit and they derive pleasure from the godly reality on high. And when we say on high, particularly when we talk about Gan Eden Ha'elyin, the neshamas of the greatest neshamas of all times, the Tanoim, of the Nevi'im, the Tzadikim, Lashon of the Alter Rebbe, Moshe Rabbeinu, Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov. They're sitting in Gan Eden, in the highest levels of Gan Eden, of course. And Yelchum Nechayel Chol, there's no end. There is no end, because anything associated with the godly reality, of course, there is no end. So they climb and they go higher and higher and deeper into these, appreciating the revelation of the manifestation of Gan Eden and Ha'elyin, as an example. But they will rush down when Mashiach will come and invest in physical bodies, which is again the resurrection, the time of Tchis HaMesim, the resurrection of those who deceased, the arisal of those who passed on. And why would they want to come back into a goof, into a physical body? It doesn't make sense, and it truly doesn't. And particularly from where they're coming from, why come back into this world? Shouldn't really take the time to repeat. We explain, because in this world is going to be the revelation of that Seviv Kalalmin, the transcendent dimension of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And Memala Kalalmin, in the face of Seviv Kalalmin, is a drop in the bucket. We explained last week, we mentioned last week in the previous classes as well, Alter Rebbe's famous analogy in Kuti Torah of the Tipo Achas, that one drop in the Mediterranean Ocean. How could you compare one teaspoon, even how much more so one drop? All the worlds, including Gan Eden, Natach, and Gan Eden Elyon, is only created by one letter of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We explain particularly when it comes to letters. Speech, which is not even the inner workings of a human being, how much more so we're talking about the inner workings of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, as the Alter Rebbe explains in the famous presentation in the chapters Chof and Chof Aleph in L'Kutei Amorim. Very important to learn. So you can imagine how little even the whole Gan Eden is, including Gan Eden Ha'elyon, in comparison to the whole ocean, which means the entire Eibishter, with the way Hashem has formed himself by himself. And this is going to be manifest and revealed in this very physical world. So of course the neshamas are rushing down, because whatever they're appreciating now is a drop in comparison to the entire Eibishter. Saying it's a bit brief, but the overall is the message. And that whole Eibishter will be presented and will be manifest in this very physical Olam. Why will it be manifest in this physical Olam, this physical world, more than any other world on high, which seems paradoxical? It should, apparently. This is the most limited Olam from all the Olamis. Tachtin she'ein tachtin l'mata minu. It's the most nadir Olam. And the answer is because that's where HaKadosh Baruch Hu has a taiva, nisaba HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to be. In other words, to be a man, be manifest and exist. HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted a dwelling place in this very physical world. So Hashem's whole attention, the whole Eibishter, is in this Olam, and that's where Hashem put his entire essence into Torah, entire self, the entire Mediterranean. Again, in comparison to that, Nekuda Ktana, Ki B'Ko Hashem Tzori Lamim. This very physical world was created with a Hey. The whole Elam Haba, the whole entire Elam Haba, including the Gan Eden, was with one Yud. The entire Eibishter is in Elam Hazeh, because that's where HaKadosh Baruch Hu had a desire to be. We gave many examples in the past. When one's traveling on a plane, as an example, and he has a deal of a handshake for the few moments in a particular alley, and not necessarily a developed place, and somewhere in China, as an example, China just as a far away, distant place. And there it's going to be a handshake for a few moments in a particular place, which is not necessarily even a presentable area of the overall or the place where that deal is going to be made. So the person's ready to travel there, and of course he travels there. He does whatever he can if he has the ability to travel pleasantly, a first class ticket as an example, and come and check into an important, beautiful hotel, and then he has to leave that hotel to go to that alleyway wherever he's going to make that deal, and that's worth it for him to go through all that in order to do that handshake, to make that deal, come back home with a few $1 million. Even though in the Nimshul, this is Hashem's home. This is where Hashem really wants to be and stay and so on. Which is the spirit of why the Seviv Kol Almin will be manifest precisely in this world permanently, which would be the state post Chias HaMesim. But in the analogy over here is that is the first class place or even lounge prior, and then on the flight, and then namely when you check into the 5-star hotel, is it more comfortable than that unclean alley as an example? It is. Of course it is. But that's what you have in mind, and you're ready to travel all the way there. And all the in-between, you would love to avoid. And how do we know you love to avoid? That same deal would be able to be made at your doorstep. You would never travel in these beautiful, you never travel again with these beautiful accommodations, with these very comfortable accommodations. You don't care to stay in that beautiful hotel. That hotel might be nicer than your own home, but you don't want to leave your own home. And if that deal was a block away, you wouldn't do all that traveling at all. You'd rather be at home and rather that everything is established a little closer to you. So the whole traveling with all the comforts and all the glimmer and glitz is just to get to that place, because that's what you have in mind. And the other is not even real to you, truly real to you. And again, because if that deal was close by, you wouldn't go that far to stay in that beautiful, luxurious hotel. You don't care so much about it. You'd rather sit in your own couch at home, because that's where this is your domain. And so too, you'd rather that deal is nearby, a block away from you, or at your doorstep. So your objective of going through all that is to get to the alleyway or that place, particularly a clean place, a neat place. It could very well be it's not. But that handshake is so vital to you, because that handshake, you gained a few $1 million as an example, or you brought merchandise which you can sell for a few $1 million and make a few $1 million off it. So it's all worth it to travel there and go through all that in order to get to that place, because that's where you want to be. And all the other in-betweens, as exciting as they are and physically more comfortable, and again, you're talking about a luxurious hotel. Could you compare the hotel room or the lounge to that alleyway? No, you can't. There's no comparison, but that's where you really want to be. HaKadosh Baruch Hu's core essence is, his desire is to be dafka down here in this very physical world. Now, again, what sent you to this chapter, which we mentioned quite a few times over the study. This is one of the most fundamental chapters of the Alter Rebbe, explaining the Hashem's connection, dafka to'elam hazeh, to this very physical world. This is the famous 37th chapter as well, but namely the beginning of 36, by the world of Atzilus, which would be analogous, lahabdul of course, but just an example to the beautiful, luxurious hotel. I'm not interested in the luxurious hotel. The luxurious hotel will give me the ability to come to that alleyway where I'm going to strike the deal. And again, legally, but it's just not particularly a pretty setup there. Or the place is not particularly a pretty place. Certainly not comparison to the luxurious hotel. But I'm not interested in that. It's just there in order to come to that place. I have to be in a place to stay in order to allow myself to be composed when I'm exactly make that handshake. So this is just a means to an end. Atzilus, again, lahavdil, even an example, we should say lahavdil, but this is analogous to the luxurious hotel. It's beautiful, it's a godly world, but this is a descent for HaKadosh Baruch Hu, because even the connected to any Eilam is a great descent of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But the whole reason why HaKadosh Baruch Hu has established Atzilus, in order that it should be the evolution of all Eilam, is from Atzilus to Bria to Yitzira to Asiyah to Hashem should be able to come down with his whole glory, with himself. The loy, the core essence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu is dafka in here. It's not a pretty place. And it's a limited place. And Alter Rebbe explains there. Again, take a look at the Lashon of the Alter Rebbe in the 36th chapter of Likutei Amarim. It's a click away on this series, on this site, in this learning. What Elam Haz is all about. Really unpretty and dark and opaque place. A world which denies the very reality of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but that's what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted to be. And of course, the world will be transformed to that very reality. And therefore, where the HaKadosh Baruch Hu give his Torah, dafka down here in this world, not on high. Malachim begged Hashem, T'nohit chal hashamayim, but your glory, please bring your glory on Hashem. Said, no. I wanted the Torah to be given, the Torah is meant to be given down here. On Noichi Hashem Lekecha, where's HaKadosh Baruch Hu's core essence? We mentioned this as well many times. The Noichi, as the Zayar says, it's the Leis Ram, is Leibishum Eis, Leibishum Kaitz, a part of HaKadosh Baruch Hu which cannot be described, nor with a word, a letter, even a spike. The core essence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu Hashem placed in Torah. As the Gemara famously says, Anoichi is an acronym, no nafshik savis yavas. My essence, I and my soul, I wrote into Torah, I gave it over to you. Or I gave myself over into Torah and I gave that to you. To every single Yid who learns Torah, he connects with the essence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the entire Mediterranean, not a little drop. I mentioned many times that it's such a false, inherently false understanding or establishment that I learned Torah and do mitzvahs down here in order to reach Chayil Mabah. So of course, when you're talking about appreciation, we can never compare the delight, we can never appreciate the overall, the delight and pleasure that Neshama experiences in Gan Eden when it's divested of body with all the body needs, limitations and difficulties, whatever is associated with body as we know it. It needs this and it has limited over here. After a few hours it gets hungry. Even on the simple encounters or identifications with our body on a daily basis, an hourly basis, particularly when a person sometimes needs more, meaning to say that this preoccupation and that worry and that concern, but it's all associated with the guf and the nefesh habahamis, the body, the animal soul, meaning to say the life of the person in this world when the neshama divests from this body. Of course, the delight, it's free from any limitations, and when it connects and is able to bask in the ziva shechina, in the ray of the divine presence, we can't think of any greater tainug, any greater pleasure for the neshama, of course. And that's why it does say, haskin atzmacha, in the world to come, when you're talking about delight and pleasure, can't compare. Even the Mishnah says the greatest pleasures a person can have in this physical world, which even he has a bumpless life, which doesn't really exist in reality, but all that pleasures which you would have in this world, and comforts and pleasures, does not come to even one moment of pleasure in the world to come, when the neshama is divested of body and connects with the source of all tanugim, which is the HaKadosh Baruch Hu himself. Can't compare. But nonetheless, the saying the Mishnah says, when you're talking about what level the Yid connects with the HaKadosh Baruch Hu in this world through repentance and good deeds, quoting the Mishnah, Tshuva, Maisim Tov, which includes the entire package of Torah mitzvahs, is greater than the entire Elam Haba, which is synonymous with the message over here. The Elam Haba refers to Ganina Tacht and Ganina Eli, the myriads of levels, infinite levels, exist in Gan Eden. They climb from level to level. And one mitzvah in this world is greater than the entire Olam Haba? Really? Answer is yes. And therefore, to say that we learn Torah in order to reach Olam Haba is like someone saying, "I'm going to give you all the waters of the Mediterranean." You like water, right? Water is so vital to you. Again, it's inaccurate because no one needs the entire Mediterranean. But let's say Mediterranean was about gold. Every drop was another like a block of gold. You want the entire Mediterranean? I'm going to have the whole entire Mediterranean for you, man. And once you have the entire Mediterranean, you know what your reward is going to be? A tiny drop of the Mediterranean. Not even a teaspoon. It's ludicrous. It's not fair to educate children as an example. So we do mention, again, when you're talking about this, the taino, the delight in Elokus, of course, here a person's limited, again, till tchias hamesim. But what, and therefore in the world to come, of course, there's greater delight and pleasure. But what the person has to know, that when you learn a Mishnah, you're learning halacha, you're learning a piece of Gemara, you have the entire Eibishter. Hashem ano nafshik sabes yavis. You put his entire core, not a drop. Kibiko Hashem tzuri lami. All the worlds were created with two letters. This world with a hey, and the entire Elam Haba with a yud, a yud. The whole Eibishter is in the Mishnah. The whole Eibishter is in halacha. The whole Eibishter is in tefillin. Again, there's a difference of Torah mitzvahs and the overall, but rather in the overall, we say Tshuva Ma'asim Tov is the whole package of Torah mitzvahs. The entire Mediterranean, the entire Eibishter is in that mitzvah. Tefillin, mezuzahs, and so on. Lulav and Esri. So we have to motivate ourselves with our excitement. Dafka here, I want to connect to Hashem Himself, not to a tiny drop. And because HaKadosh Baruch Hu placed Himself in El Nisab, HaKadosh Baruch Hu did it, but Tachteinim in this very physical world. And that's where Hashem gave us Torah, that's where Hashem gave Him. So, in the end of times, the total manifestation of HaKadosh Baruch Hu Himself, the way Hashem has formed Himself by Himself, of course, will be in Elam Hazeh. And therefore the Neshama will invest in a body. We did mention the body, it says in a number of places, will be, yes, a physical body, but a crystallized type of body which is distinct, like the bodies of the great tzaddikim. There's something great of them, not only on the level of their neshama. You look at them, it is different. It's distinct even from a simple person, or even someone who's even less than being a simple person. You look at the tzaddik, there's a millisecond, you realize this is something very striking. Moshe Rabbeinu came down from the mountain. Kikor ner panav. Was he a physical body? Exactly the way a physical body is shaped and looks like, but nonetheless, it was different. It was distinct. Moshe Rabbeinu's guf was a crystallized guf. It was transparent. It was transparent, and therefore the godly reality shone through Moshe Rabbeinu's guf. Therefore, his skin literally glowed. And it was even difficult even to look at Moshe Rabbeinu. To that degree, as the Pasuk says. Because Moshe Rabbeinu's guf was a conduit to the revelation which Moshe experienced on Har Sinai and throughout. You looked at Moshe Rabbeinu, it was of course different and distinct. Throughout the entire Moshe Rabbeinu's entire tenure as Moshe Rabbeinu, leading Am Yisrael. Look at a moment looking at a tzaddik. There's something very striking because the guf is a vehicle to his neshama, and namely to the godly message, the godly reality, and namely the godly reality, the way it's associated with Seviv Kol Almin, which the tzaddik lives a life based on the ultimate purpose, and he is a symbol of the way Tchias Hamesim, the average Yid, would appear with his guf tzach v'zach v'noki, as it says in a number of places, mitzuchtzach, crystallized body, because the body will be a conduit, will be a transparent conduit to the on high. But a body will be, and the neshamas are ready to come down, yes, into a physical body to experience the culmination of Ma'aseinu, Avodaseinu, our work and our toil throughout all of history, and particularly since we established ourselves as a nation, and more specifically from the time of Matan Torah. This will all be manifest the way Hashem has formed himself by himself the entire Mediterranean, again, following that famous mashal. The Alter Rebbe brings myriads of times L'Kutei Amarim. Interesting, in the entire Sefer Tanya, the Alter Rebbe does not bring this mashal, but L'Kutei Torah. In Torah, the Alter Rebbe brings this many times. The entire Eibishter is here. In Golus, we don't see it, but it doesn't take away from the fact that he is here more than he's anywhere else. Mashiach will come, it'll be manifest. So the tzaddikim are going to go from that level, memalik kol almin. Again, we won't go into that because we explained this last week, the difference precisely with the memalik kol almin, which is a limited dimension of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to sevil kol almin, the way HaKadosh Baruch Hu is for himself, by himself, which is bein arayich. There's no comparison, of course. There's 100 and 1,000 and 10,000, 100,000, 1,000,000, 10 million, 1 billion, 10 billion, 1 trillion, quintillion. Great numbers. And they are. And we appreciate them. Let's have a lot. The Yid, to do good things with it, of course. But all that in comparison to infinity, that's namely the message the Alter Rebbe made pretty mumches. Everything in comparison to infinity is killah. There's no significance. As we even mentioned, basically the Alter Rebbe's message there, if you want to flip the word, but this is definitely the message of the Alter Rebbe. If infinity is excited about 1 trillion, over 1 million, or even over 1,000, even over 100, even over 1, right? 1 trillion, 1, what's the comparison? But if an infinity is excited of the trillion over the 1 as an example, like why not? It's infinite. Isn't it closer to the trillion? Or isn't the trillion closer to the infinite? Comes out to them and says no, because if infinity is excited about 1 trillion over 1 million, or even over 1,000, even over 1, it's not infinite. True infinity is that 1 trillion, quintillion, 1,000, 100, and 1 is exactly the same. Because the moment is excited by a higher number, so it's not infinite. So the infinite in comparison to the finite, even the highest numbers are finite. There's no comparison at all. So Memala Kalaman is the finite dimension. If you can't say the finite dimension of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the way the Eibishter placed himself in this manner to be the creator, to be the emanator, and to connect to all of reality, commensurate to the ability, how much they could receive from that level. Again, the energy in Atzilus, you can't compare it to the energy of Bria. Bria to Yitzira, Yitzira to Asiya. The other way around, Asiya Ruchnis, and Asiya to Bria, and Bria to Yitzira. Yitzira to, Asiya to Yitzira, that is, and Yitzira to Bria, and Bria to Atzilus is Bichlal, a different idea. Atzilus is a different idea completely. We spoke about this many times. It's a world where houses the Ein Sof. The revelation of Atzilus is no comparison at all to Elam Abriya and below. But it's still part of the Memale Kol Almin dimension of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Memale Kol Almin fills all the worlds based and commensurate to how refined the world is, how godly the world is, to receive a greater dosage, if you will. Namely, a qualitative dosage of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. How much it connects with the Eilam. Atzilus, for example, is Iva Gar Yichad Mo'Yichad, Iva Gar Meichad. Hashem and His light in Eilam Atzilus are one. Even the Kelim are one with HaKadosh Baruch Hu because they're so refined, they're so godly. But this is all still part of the package of Mamala Kalam, trillion, quintillion. The infinity, the Seviv Kalam of HaKadosh Baruch Hu is Be'ein Arech. That's what's going to be manifest in this world by Tchias HaMesim. And therefore the Neshamas, as much as they're climbing higher and yet higher, it's still in the realm of Memale Kol Almin. So are they going to have a desire to come down into this world, even to invest the physical body? As absurd as it sounds, of course they will, because this world, the level of Seviv Kol Almin, the transcendent dimension of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the way Hashem is for himself, by himself, will be manifest in this world. So there's no comparison. The finite to the infinite, even the highest levels of the finite, again, talking in numbers, average person, 1 million, 10 million, 100 million, it's an overwhelming number. 1 billion, 10 billion, 100 billion, 1 trillion. These are enormous numbers. But still, it's in the world of finite. For that matter, take 1 trillion, take a $1, a 1 penny. Categorically, It's not a trillion anymore. It doesn't make a difference really in reality if it's less, a dollar or more. But by definition, a trillion is a trillion ones, because even the trillion is associated with the finitude, for the finite. Infinity is a total different idea. So the greatest revelation of all these neshamas, which they're experiencing, neshamas rather are experiencing, does not come to what is in Elam Hazeh and what will be overtly manifest in Elam Hazeh when we will reach this time of Tchias HaMesim, this epoch of Tchias HaMesim, the resurrection of the dead, meaning to say the resurrection of those who passed on, because of course they will want to rush down to invest again in their guf hagashmi, the physical body, because here there will be the revelation of the Seviv Kolalmin, the way Hashem has formed himself by himself. That will be totally manifest in Elam Hazeh. Is there a comparison? No, of course, there's no comparison at all, even to a neshama like Moshe Rabbeinu, which is Yelchu Mechayel Chayel, the highest level we don't begin to understand. We don't understand even the beginning of Elam Hazeh, of Ganin HaTachtin. How can we? We did mention maybe a spark periodically. A person, like the Gemara says, Elam Chatira B'Chayecha. By them, obviously, it was default by them. They saw their world in their lifetime. An average person periodically, mentioned sometimes a person experiences a healthy davening, a spark, but there's no comparison. As long as the neshama is divested in body, we'll never understand, have appreciation of the tainig of the neshama, the pleasure of the neshama, the way it's divested of body. Even in the beginning, the minimal level, the minimal of Gan Eden HaTachtin. Could you compare that to the Gan Eden HaElyon and neshama like Moshe Rabbeinu? There's no comparison. Yilchu Mechayel Chayil. But in the end of the day, that's only the Ziv HaShechina, the ray of the Shechina, the Memalik Kol Almin, dimension of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The Shechina itself, meaning say the Seviv Kol Almin, which is even deeper than Shechina. The words of Shechina is also part of Memalik Kol Almin, Shechenes U'Mislabeshes. It invests, Memalik, the HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the way Hashem is transcendent, for himself, by himself, Seviv Kol Almin. That will be manifest in Elam Hazeh. There's no comparison. So we'll stop over here with the text, but just to mention, the story of Rabbi Bar Nachmani. Why is Al Tzibur bringing it over here? Because Rabbi Bar Nachmani. So just quickly, I believe we said we're going to try to just say the nigla part of it. So it's regarding there was an argument in Bezdin, in the Yeshiva Shel Maila, the heavenly yeshiva, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So it's regarding the dinim of negoyim. Usually the negoyim, of course, we're not going to get into all the dinim over here, that usually the nega is established as a nega, which a person becomes impure and he has to go through the rituals in order to purify himself or herself. So there is the nega, the white spot, which comes up on the flesh of the body. And then there's three ways that's just the introduction, if you will, or this is the basis, the template through which the nega, or the blemish, or the nega, the however it's called, they say the terminology of leprosy is not accurate when it comes to but usually generically it's called leprosy, the nega tsaras, but the tumah over here is established when on top of this white spot which comes up on the body of the human being, there's two white hairs come, or there is a spot in it which is back to the healthy, a spot within that nega which is center, but yet it's a michya, meaning to say it looks like the healthy body, and it is a healthy spot within the nega, within the different type of looking overall spot, which has to be pretty much in the center, off the border. I'm not going to go into all the halachas. And then another way it becomes tummy, that if it spreads more than it was initially, the size, the way it was initially shown to the kain, which has itself in its own size in halacha. Okay. Let's try to just keep it to the point over here. So classically, it would be the person would have that nega, and then he would come to the kohen. The kohen would he would be quarantined for 7 days, and if he comes back and he has any of these 3 signs, it would render him tummy, impure, and he would have to go to through these rituals in order to purify himself or herself. So the Gemara asked the question, or in heaven, in the heavenly court, there was an argument. What if first the white hair comes, and then the nega, then that white spot comes? Is the person tahir or tamei? It was an argument between the yeshiva shalmaila and HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Whatever that means. Again, you can see the Gemara. They said, let's ask Rabbi Bar Nachmani. Rabbi Nachmani was famous, was known to be a baki, very well learned and advanced in this particular subject. He was a baki in all Chelkei Torah. He was a famous rabbi. But in this area, he was a mumch, he was an expert. So in High, they said, let's ask Rabbi Bar Nachmani. So the reason why, and again, there's so much spoken about this in famous mind of the Alter Rebbe, was Samti Kotkit Shim Shisayich. He says that they asked Rabbi Nachmani because it was the last moments of Rabbi Nachmani's life, and because the Psak Din is dafka of an neshama and Gufin again, which really ties itself into dafka over here that Hashem gave us Torah. Dafka over here, Hashem placed this whole core essence, and that true emes of Hashem is la'elam, is really connected after to this physical world. And Rabbi Nachmani was his last moments, but he was still alive. So one hand he was the expert in the subject, the other hand he was still alive. So they said, let's ask him, because the Psak Din is precisely through the Talmid Chacham in this world. Of course, there are rules. As an example, there's all rules who we actually paskin, but it's all based on the neshamas which live down here in this world, invested in a body. They have the ability to be placed to establish a psak din even more than the yeshiva shel maila, the yeshiva on high. So they said, let's ask him. He's an expert and he's still alive in this physical world. That's why Hashem says nitzchuni bani nitzchuni. The psak halacha comes precisely from the bezdin down here, which is classically known. For example, when is Pesach? It's Mikadosh Yisrael ve'azmanim. When is Pesach? Pesach is established the 14th day of when Ish Chodesh is. When is Ish Chodesh? So today we have the calendar. Originally, it was based on the Bezdin's establishment. When is Ish Chodesh? Of course, based on the rules of the witnesses come and saw the moon, known to be the whole segment of Kiddush HaChodesh. But when Bezdin paskins when Ish Chodesh is, that's when Ish Chodesh is. And 14 days later, at night, you must eat matzah. So the whole heavenly court works with the dictate of this bezdin in this physical world when they establish shchedishes, and that's when 14 days later you must eat matzah and you must abstain from eating chametz. This is the reason why we say Mikadosh Yisrael v'hazmanim. It comes to Shabbos, we say Mikadosh HaShabbos. We don't say Yisrael v'Shabbos because Shabbos is Mikadosh v'Kaima, means the Shabbos is locked in every single week. 7th day Shabbos. It's sanctified because it's inherently sanctified. Inherently holy, that is. Yontif is based on the establishment of the Bezdin. Hashem says, let's go see what's going on in the Bezdin Shalmata. They said that's days of Shchedesh. 15 days later is Pesach from that. And every Yontif. And in general, the rules of Torah are based on the Piskei Dinim in this world. And again, it ties itself so beautifully because this is where the Neichi Hashem Alikecha is. So in the end, the HaKadosh Baruch Hu said Torah, Bezdin Shal Yeshiva Shal Maila said Tamei. They said, let's ask Rabbi Nachmani, which the Psak Din was Tahir actually. But what Alter Rebbe is trying to glean from this is that there's a Yeshiva Shal Maila. And as Alter Rebbe says, what do they study there? The Neshama appreciates the godly energy which is invested in the Torah that it learned down here in this world. This is the experience, the default experience of the Neshamas in Gan Eden. Einig Neshamas in Gan Eden is from Nasagat Seid Zadesh, Asik Be'elam Hazeh B'nigla. And this is what the Alter Rebbe brings, is the whole Yeshiva Shal Maila. This is namely why the Alter Rebbe brings the story. Because we have to understand what does mean Yeshiva Shal Maila said so, and then the Eibishter says, Torah, what are they arguing in HaKadosh Baruch Hu? It's explained in many places. And again, that Maimon famous of Samti Kotkit Shim Shisayich, the Maimon of the Alter Rebbe L'Kutei Torah, explains this whole idea, what it means B'chlal, A yeshiva shalom should argue about Kodesh Baruch Hu. And the fact that they came down here, this is another sentiment which Al Rebbe is presenting over here. Why did they ask Rabbi Nachmani? Because Rabbi Nachmani was an neshama beguf in this world. So he was connected to the Nechi Hashem Lekecha. He was connected to the Tachlis HaKavon of Nisava Kodesh Baruch Hu. This loyis baratid of Tachtenim. The loyis that are Nechi. And therefore the Psak Din is Dafka down here by the Chachamim, true Chachamim, of course, need not to mention true Chachamim down here in this world where Hashem says Nitzchuni, Bani Nitzchuni, that I will base my ruling in the heavenly court based on the Psak Din of the Talmid Chachamim down here in this world, because this world is where you have the true core essence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So these are the 2 points that Al Rebbe gleans from this story. He says it again succinctly over here. B'uvda d'Rabbi bar Nachmani. And finally, which is an important part of today's class, when you say Eni Kamei Eagle Chas v'Shalom, I just suggest, instead of taking all the time, to see the Perek there, Perek Mem Ches, to take a look. He has it elsewhere, also in Shayich B'Emunah, he speaks about Sefer Kol Almin. The second segment. When you say HaKadosh Baruch Hu's transcendent, we gave the example that for you have a device. You have a device, a toaster, as an example, electrical device. You plug it in to the outlet. And what is the advantage of the outlet? The outlet condenses. There's the generator, which stands in the outside of the city or the town, whatever it is. But it generates too much energy and too much electricity. It's not commensurate to the average device. You see, even when it comes through the condensed state, there's also differences. The plug to the grander devices, the washing machine, the oven, as an example. But in the overall, what comes through the outlets is a condensed version, or it's condensed energy, that is, which goes through the wiring till it comes to the actually outlet. So you plug your toaster, as an example, into the outlet. You plug it into the generator, it not only won't work, it probably explode because it's too much energy. And therefore, in order to work, you plug it into the condensed amount of energy which goes through the wiring and eventually ends up in your outlet, as an example. So someone's going to say, if that's the case, who needs the generator? Who needs a generator? If I plug it into the generator, not only it won't work, but it'll cause catastrophe. So if I plug it into the outlet, that's where I'll be able to appreciate this device. So I don't need a generator, really. Based on this, which is true. You plug it into the generator, it will just explode. So one's going to argue, what do I need a generator? I'm good with the outlet, which is, of course, nonsense. Because the whole energy of the outlet is just because there's the generator there. When you're plugging in to that outlet, what are you really plugging into? You're plugging into the generator. But the generator is too strong, it's too powerful, it's potent energy. So it has to go through the wiring in order for you to benefit from that device. But really what you're connecting to is the energy of the generator. Take away the generator, you have nothing. And similarly, when you say Seviv Klalmin, and of course the generator has to be out of the city, but it doesn't have to physically be out of the city. Even if it was in your domain or in your turf, it will still be too hard to deal with it. But the only reason why you're able to deal with anything and appreciate all those devices is because of the generator. The outlet is just the condensed version of that very generator. So wherever the generator is, it's really here. The reason why your toaster is working is because of the generator. The entire generator is here, but it cannot be manifest with its full energy and force. It has to be through the condensed wiring, which allows the outlet to be and that you'll be able to plug into the outlet and not into the generator. But what you're gaining is only from the generator. It's only the energy of the generator, condensed version of. But that's it. That's why your device is working, for no other reason. So basically, the Rebbe says, Seviv Kol Almin. It's not just that way Hashem has formed some by some Seviv. It just surrounds. It's far away. It surrounds. No, it's right here. The Seva Kalaman of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, of course, is right here. The only difference is it's not manifest. It doesn't stand to be slapshus, because if it would, nothing finite would be able to exist in the face of the infinite. Got to look there and see. I'll tell you a few mishalim, famous examples. You're sitting by a table, and then you're thinking about the table. The table's in your mind. You see it crystal clear, but your mind is hovering over. It's not connecting. There's no table, physical table in your mind. It's too big. But there's a real table in your mind. You're thinking about it presently, as an example. But it's just more like a seiviv connection to the table, even though, as the Alter makes it clear, the table's truly not in your mind physically, and the table is independent of your capturing the image of the table. If you stop, the table is still there. When it comes to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, everything is part of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's reality, and if HaKadosh Baruch Hu would stop thinking about the table would really not exist. It just exists because HaKadosh Baruch Hu is, therefore everything is. But the core of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, this transcendent dimension of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, it's everywhere, but it doesn't stand be his slapshus. It's not manifest. That's what makes it transcendent. But it's all here equally, like it's up there, if you will. The reason why the device is working is only because of the energy of the generator, nothing else. But the generator, with its potent energy, cannot connect directly, meaning to say it can't stand be he slaps you, so to say, with his device. It'll be too overwhelming. So you have the condensed, or the wiring condenses that energy in order to be able to give the device its chance to work and function. But the only thing what it's gaining is really the connection to the generator. And so too, Seva Kalaman, its Abish is right here. It's just the manifestation of it, the slapshus of it, of course, that is transcendent. That is removed. But it's not, there's a circle, Hashem is here, and here is only Mamala Kalaman. No, of course not. So you could look there, that it says, Ein Sham Heitiv, look there thoroughly, you understand and appreciate, namely appreciate the message. So to conclude over here, this Seva Kalaman, yes, when Mashiach will come, we'll be able to tune into the generator, if you will. How does that work? We just said the finite cannot exist in the face of the infinite. But through Maseinu V'Avedaseinu, through our toil and our work and our doings throughout Golus, as it's explained a number of places, in Kabbalah and Chassidus, that this is the chidush of the transformation of Eilumis, particularly Eilam Hazeh, through the Koyach of Torah, which is the Anochi, the core essence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that the world ultimately one day will be able to coexist with the Seva Kalaman, with the transcendent dimension of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which is the greatest. This is the novelty, and this is what Torah is able to accomplish. That in an area which Eilumis cannot exist at all, for that matter, because how could the finite exist in the face of the infinite? When Mashiach will come, they will actually be able to connect. And it's explained in many, many places. This is the Koyach of Torah. It's able to transform Eilam Hazeh in a way that Eilam Hazeh, even as an Eilam, the Neshamas are going to be invested in a physical body, living in Eilam Hazeh. But because that's where Hashem, the objective and goal of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, in a way of Nis'av HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Hashem wanted a desire, to have a desire, means it's a type, it's an most inner type of desire of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to have a dwelling place in this very physical world. And what level? Lo Yizbarich. The whole core essence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted Dafka to be in Eilam Hazeh. And this is where Hashem gave the Torah. And through the Koyach of Torah, we're able to transform the dynamics and realities of Eilam Hazeh, that they'd be able to coexist with the Ein Sof. They'll be able to plug into the Ein Sof. And the whole Ein Sof, save of Kol Almin, will be totally manifest in this very physical world in the time of Tchias HaMesim. And therefore, of course, the Neshamas are going to dafka want to come down, because whatever their connection to is presently, wherever they are, in other words, the level they're connected to is Mimala Kalaman, very high levels of revelation and manifestations of the reality of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But Mimala Kalaman, in comparison to Seva Kalaman, there's no comparison. And Seva Kalaman will be manifest dafka in this very physical world at the time of Tchias HaMesim. And therefore the Neshamas are going to dafka come down into Eilam Hazeh in order to connect to this true, bleakvul, infinite dimension of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, known again as the Seviv Kol Almin energy, the way Hashem is for himself, by himself, transcendent of any Eilamness, the true infinity of HaKadosh Baruch Hu.